Alright, so we have allowed this to stir overnight after we finish the addition of NBS, allowing it to warm up to room temperature, as you don't need to maintain that cold temperature all night just while you're adding the NBS to the solution. So you can see that we've removed the ice bath, and now we're going to add concentrated hydrochloric acid to the solution to quench the reaction until it reaches a pH of less than 7. It takes a lot of HCl to make this happen. We're going to add it in small portions, but ensuring that you mix very well in between additions, because it's very hard to mix water and DCM, so you need to give it a good stir, some vigorous stirring each time that you add the HCl. And the way you can kind of tell that it's getting there is you can see it's all one layer right now. Once it starts to phase separate into two very distinct layers, you'll know you're very close to reaching a pH of less than 7, and then you should start testing the pH with pH paper. So another thing you need to make sure you do is that pretty much inevitably a little bit of NBS will get blown out by the argon flow, and so there will be a little bit of NBS in that ice. And what that means is you need to treat this water from this ice bath as hazardous waste. And so here we have a new waste container that we're going to pour it into. And so just make sure that you're not pouring this directly down into the sink if you suspect NBS might have contaminated the water. So since we're going to be shaking this really hard, some of the solution might get up into that grease, and so before we do anything else, we're going to use a little bit of hexane sprayed on a Kim wipe or a paper towel to wipe away that grease, and it takes typically about 2 to 3 times to fully remove the grease. You can see it on there, and so once it's all removed, you should see all that grease gone. And one thing that's important is just make sure you don't use too much hexanes. If the paper towel is too wet, when you wipe it, like squeezing a sponge, you'll squeeze out some of that hexanes that'll have grease into it into your solution, which is not what you want. Alright, so wet your paper towel, give it a good wipe until you see no more grease. So you can see there's still a little bit of grease on that one. So that's after one wipe. So like I said, it typically takes about 2 to 3 wipes to get. Alright, so Jack has added the first portion of HCl, and you can see that it will start to create a lot of vapors. As you start to mix it, you'll actually notice that when you first add it, you won't really see much. But as you thoroughly mix it, as Jack's doing here, you'll see those vapors form. So we're just going to keep adding until we see 2 nice layers, and then we're going to test the pH, make sure we're below 7. So we're adding more HCl to the solution. Make sure you use a funnel so you don't spill it everywhere. And then we're going to give it another good shake, and you'll see it start to react. Alright, so you can see where this is what it should start to look like, although we're definitely not there yet. But just to check, we'll dip a pipette deep down in the solution, making sure you're not just sampling the water that's on the top. And then dip it down on pH paper. Alright, so Jack's going to give it a real good shake. And another good sign that you can tell you're there is that no more gas vapors are forming. That's another good clue, and so I think that this is it. Alright, so as I said, we didn't see any more vapors forming when we mixed it, and you can now see that we have 2 distinct layers, and as well that bottom layer is testing quite acidic. So you just want to make sure you get the pH below 2 so you acidify all of those protons in solution. Alright, so now that we got it nice and neutralized, Jack's going to pour it in the separatory funnel. Make sure you have this separatory funnel very well clamped, and also ensure that you put it at a height at which you're also able to fit the receptacle underneath it that you're going to drain that water into. So pouring it in. Alright, so just to make sure that we leave ourselves some headspace, we're going to do these washes in 2 portions, so we've set aside what we have left over. Always label what everything is just so you don't get it mixed up. And then we're also going to rinse out the inside of this just to get any product that might be left in there with a little bit of water to get all them salts out of there, and then just a teeny bit of DCM to get all that product out of that flask. So this is just regular DI water that we're going to use to wash out the inside of the flask. And then after we've used it to wash out the inside of the flask, we're going to pour this into our SUP funnel and use it for our first water wash. So you just want to get all those solids dissolved that are on the inside. Just give it a real good shaky shake. Alright, looks good. So you can see we got all those solids dissolved now. And now we're just going to pour that into the SUP funnel and give our product a nice water wash. So just make sure you leave yourself a little bit of headspace, which looks perfect. Alright, so to wash this, you're going to hold that cap. You're going to hold the other end. With your other hand, you want to make sure you're holding that cap on there. And sometimes they will leak a little bit. You can either double glove or try and find a cap that fits a little better. So shake it as hard as you can, like it owes you money. And then make sure every 5 to 10 seconds that you're venting any pressure so no pressure builds up and explodes. And then after you give it about 5 vigorous shakes, you're gonna put it back up, and you should see that all the solids have dissolved in the water. And then you're gonna let it separate back out and then separate the 2 layers. Okay. Alright, so first you're gonna take the cap off once you have 2 nicely separated layers. The bottom layer is the DCM layer, which we want to keep because that has our product in it. And so we're gonna drain that DCM layer down into a large enough receptacle. So you can go real fast at the start just to speed it up, and then once you get closer to that phase separation, you're gonna slow it down. And it's best practice to cut it off a little early rather than letting water get in. So I'd rather leave a few drops of DCM behind than keep adding that dirty water back into this. So once you've drained all that DCM out, you're gonna then throw this water into something that you discard. So it doesn't even need to be clean, so we're actually just gonna pour it all back into this flask and collect those water washes until we're done, and then pour it all in the aqueous waste. Okay. So after the first wash, we've poured the DCM back in so we can do the second wash. So now Jack is gonna add more water. And so whenever you're doing a wash, a typical rule of thumb or an extraction is to add about 1/3 as much volume relative to the amount that you're either extracting or washing. Is that good? Alright, so we've done our second wash. We added fresh water, not the water you used from the original wash. You throw that away. You're going to use fresh water for that second wash. Let it separate out. And then we're gonna pool all of the DCM extracts together. And then next we're gonna dry that with magnesium sulfate. So let it go real fast at first, then tighten it up once it starts to get close. Yep. Beautiful. Alright, so now we're going to dry our organic DCM phase with mag sulfate, which you will notice should clear up this solution a lot as it removes the water. So you can tell there's still water when it's still clumping together, and then once you have a nice free-flowing powder, you know that you're done. a good general rule is you can just cover the bottom of the flask with a good, little bit, and then it should be reasonably close. There.
Now we're cooking.
Alright, so once you're finished drying, you're gonna remove the mag sulfate by filtering. It'll be a lot faster if you decant off the liquid, so that is, as you can see, Jack was slowly pouring it. So none of that mag sulfate in the bottom actually is transferred into the flask, because if you transfer the solids, it plugs up all the holes in the filter paper and it takes 10 times as long. So another thing that's important is making sure you don't overfill past where that filter paper is, otherwise it'll just go, as you can see like on the side there, it'll go through and you'll need to do another filtration. So just be careful you don't overfill the paper. And so we're gonna rotovap this to remove all the solvent, so it's important that you only fill the flask about halfway. So we're gonna need to do multiple rotary evaporations, so we'll basically fill this about halfway, rotovap it down, then filter some more into it, rotovap it again, and so forth until we've removed all the solvent. So you can see, since he's pouring it slowly, all the solids stay in there and it filters much faster. Alright, so we have transferred this to the rotovap. Now this joint isn't 2440, which our rotovap is, and so we've used an adapter. Unfortunately, we don't have a clip for that adapter, so we Teflon taped it up here, kind of going in an X shape to tape this part and this part together. And don't be afraid to use some Teflon tape, it's 99 cents a roll. So first, we're going to turn on the rotation. Jack's gonna hold on it, make sure it doesn't fall down. And you want to get it rotating at a good speed because that's gonna help prevent bumping. But you do want it to not be so fast that it's sloshing around like crazy in there. So you kind of want to get as fast as you can without sloshing like crazy. So that looks pretty good. So out about here you can see the dial. And so now we're gonna turn on the pump, see how it goes. So at the beginning, it's going to start to bubble like crazy sometimes when you're rotovapping DCM, so I'm going to keep my left hand here prepared just in case it starts to bump. So since we're using such a big flask, we also can't use a trap, and so you really need to be careful with
this. Should we heat for this or no? Okay.
No, you don't want to heat. You want to just do this at room temperature. DCM is incredibly volatile, as we're about to see. A little bit too much so, but we'll see how it goes. So it seems like it's going fine, it hasn't dying too crazy, but it can kind of explode out of nowhere, so you want to watch it for the first like 3 to 4 minutes with your hand up here ready to open it up, calm it down. It's good, you don't need to hold it anymore. The vacuum will hold it up there. Oh. And so if it does go a little crazy, I'll pop it open a little bit just to break the seal, and it will release the vacuum slightly. But it seems like it's going pretty well. So we're just going to do this until it's a thick oil, mildly thick, about the consistency of actual oil. And then once that's done, we'll keep filtering the rest, add it in, rotovap it, and so forth. Alright, so once you've rotovapped it all down and it looks like there's really not more solvent coming off, you're going to want to leave it on the rotovap for another 10 to 20 minutes just to make sure you've removed as much solvent as you can off the rotovap. And then we're going to put it on the high vac on the Schlenk to remove as much of that DCM out of there as we can. Alright, so we finished our extra 20 minutes of rotovapping. We pulled off a good bit more solvent. And so now, overnight, we're going to full vacuum on it on a high vacuum Schlenk line. So, just make sure you grease the joints well, and yeah, we'll vacuum on it overnight.